So guess what we're here to talk about? The One Ring. So this will be probably more than one session.
Yeah, it's worthy of it too.
But I got all my gear out. I didn't actually bring everything, but we both love the One Ring. It's just such a fun game. So let's dive in. The One Ring is a role-playing game by Free League Publishing that uses really the intellectual property of the Middle-earth Enterprises Tolkien estate, organization, same company that they have to go through to do movies and stuff like that, but in such a way that it allows us to create our own stories in Arda, in Middle-earth.
Do you like Lord of the Rings?
We love
Do you want to play within Middle-earth? This is the game for you.
Like what else was going on in Middle-earth is kind of the thing that I think about when I'm designing adventures, because there's not a lot of point in trying to recreate the movies or anything, although you can certainly intersect with some of the major plot points and the characters. But the fun thing about the Lord of the Rings in a role-playing game, the One Ring, and then they also make a D&D version of the same game. The D&D rule set, version. So you can use all the content, but just use D&D rules instead. It's called Lord of the Rings role-playing. But the fun thing about this game is the setting. It's the world. And that's different. Like a lot of the other games I play, there's a couple of good settings for them, but the people aren't drawn to the setting as much as they're drawn to the rules. With this, I noticed that they're definitely drawn to the setting before they're drawn to the rules.
I think it's one thing too, because there's a wealth of media and information and stuff that you can dive into.
I don't have to explain the setting.
You know what's happening. So
I have to explain the tension in the moment, and most of the players I play with haven't been studying this world as much as I have. So I might flesh out a little bit more of the history for them so they understand, and that actually is included with the game. Although it's really kind of up to the table, how deep you go into the lore part, because you are adventuring in the world, not in the same stories. Although they're, like I said, they're intersections. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to just make sure we understand is that the One Ring is not it is a role-playing game, but it's not Dungeons and Dragons in Middle-earth. Even if you play the 5th edition rules, it's still not Dungeons and Dragons. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why that's important, because not every mechanic in the gameplay and the rule system you use reinforces the world. And that's really what they've tried to do with this from the beginning. And there's been a lot of different versions of role-playing games set in this world. But I think the One Ring 1st edition and now the new one from, newish one from Free League 2nd edition, both I think are the best possible theme versus mechanics blend, because it's a bit of both. You can't just have, crunchy mechanics that are just all about Middle-earth.
Which I think if you go into this with the mindset of I'm going to min-max, I'm going to get crunchy, I want to create the most amazing character, you're probably doing
not in a
wrong.
D&D way. If you do it in a way that's thematic, I think you can do that.
Yes, but
actually, that's my feedback in general on min-maxing play, is that if you're doing it in a way that increases the likelihood that the narrative will improve for the whole table, then I'm fine with it. Go nuts. If it's more ego-driven, if it's more I want a super powerful character, I want to not die, it breaks continuity.
Really
people start, how come he's getting the magic sword? It doesn't really hold together as well. It can be bad. So, you have to kind of balance that. But it's definitely, for example, Dungeons and Dragons, you go from level 1 to 20. And at level 20, you're almost indiscernible from a deity. You're godlike at that point. The Lord of the Rings, the One Ring, and the role-playing game, both, actually we know this because the Lord of the Rings role-playing is based on D&D SRD, 5th edition, and they cap out the levels at the 10th level. And it's certainly evident in the One Ring, where they don't have to explain why you can't keep advancing, that this is kind of the upper echelon of your capabilities, and you more than likely become more durable than actually more powerful.
You're able to withstand, you're able to survive a little bit more.
But anyway, that's an important aspect of the game too, is that the min-maxing in theme would have to respect that your character is more likely to go mad from shadow sickness, or become so exhausted and wounded that they just can't continue.
Which, and not to divert too much, but is a shared aspect of one of my other favorite RPGs, Call of Cthulhu. Like if you're playing Call of Cthulhu, you're not fighting a lot, if at all.
If you're used to playing 5th edition, which is very narrative, it's a bit more narrative. It's not really a lot more narrative, but what you'll notice is that the mechanics are simplified, and they're simplified without losing game playing fidelity. They're simplified around the themes of the game. And that's a really huge distinction.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say with Call of Cthulhu. It's like insanity, and you're not like, I'm going to be a gunslinger and do the greatest things in the world. So, anyways.
So there's a couple of different tracks when you play, like, you know, because let's talk about characters and how characters change and advance and what happens to them. So one of the most cool things is there's a physical track and sort of more of a spiritual track. So in the physical track, we're really tracking the kind of things you would expect to track in a role-playing game.
Strength.
We don't have hit points, we have something called endurance. And that's because it's balanced against what you're carrying automatically. So if you carry a lot of stuff, you're just going to be like a little more fragile. You'll have to drop stuff to gain your endurance back or something.
Dwarves are natural sprinters. They're, they're wasted on cross-country.
Exactly, it reflects the sort of like race characteristics. And then we also have weariness, basically. So, like, let's take for instance, if I have, like, say, Gira, daughter of Gutar.
She's barding.
She's a barding, so she's from, like, the western, over by the Lone Mountain. And she's got 27 max endurance, and some of this is from her culture. I shouldn't have said race earlier. It's culture, and you get an endurance, and some characteristics just from which culture you pick. But like, we're not going to go into the character generation too deeply, but let's say she has 27 max, but then she loads up with a sword, a short spear, a coat of mail, and you add up all that load, and she has 16 loads, so her actual endurance is 11. So she has sort of 11 hit points, if you want to think about it like that. And so anytime something hits you, you're going to lose some endurance. And then if your endurance is below maximum, basically, if your load plus your wounds, if she got 11 endurance wounds in the course of an adventure, she would become weary. And weariness affects your dice rolls.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So you don't have like max power all the way down to 1 hit point like you do in D&D.
Right.
You actually lose capability in a couple ways. And this is on the physical side of things. There's another physical side of things that's unrelated to endurance, because if you think about it, endurance is like somebody walks up to me and hits me with a club. That's going to take some pep out of my step.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily going to sideline me, right? Now, if somebody walks up with a sword,
there you go,
and they slice my side open, now that's going to mess me up even.
It's a bad day.
Yeah, and it might be like the physical trauma of just the impact. Like that's the endurance hit. But still only 3 or 4 out of 11. That's not a big deal. But that slicing, that's called a wound.
Yeah.
And that's a separate tracked element from endurance. And basically, you have a heart score. And your heart score gives you a rating, and in this case, your rating is 5. And that means that you can suffer 5 wounds before you're done. And you can heal your wounds, of course, but not during like an encounter, not even during an adventure arc. Usually you have to recover for months to heal a wound. And so that's an important other factor. So what that means is, like, if I score a hit on you with a spear, like an adversary, first thing I do is I give you the endurance penalty. Like, oh, I got you for 3 endurance. Okay, take 3 off your score. So now you're at, like 24 instead of 27 max. So you only have 8 left instead of 11, right? Oh, but I hit you with a spear, and a spear has a piercing characteristic, and the weapon itself will give me the number for the injury rating.
Right.
And that's a unique number. So. And then there's certain, we'll get into this in the combat side, but there's certain times where you may or may not suffer a wound. Just because you get hit by a piercing weapon doesn't mean you suffer a wound. You can defend against it.
Right.
Your armor might absorb it, whatever. So if you suffer the wound, though, that's bad. Because that can go down that can take you out much faster than just hit points.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of the physical track in a nutshell. And we'll kind of get into it a little bit more, but the upshot of it is that you rarely arrive at your destination at 100% as a party. You'll take fatigue from traveling.
Yeah.
You'll take fatigue from battling, and in fact, and again, we'll have a whole nother section on the combat mechanics in detail. But combat is best avoided in this game if you can.
Yeah.
Because even somebody with a dagger can wound you if they get the right shot in.
Yeah.
And so there's this component to it where all combat is risky, which I think reflects storytelling much more accurately.
Your actions really carry a lot of weight,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
And
for
your
sure.
interactions carry a lot of weight. And I would say not as much as Morkborg, where you're maybe die on one hit. But,
yeah, well, Morkborg is a lot more physical
brutal.
all the time.
But this
which brings us to the second part of this,
Yeah,
which
what?
is the spiritual component of
See,
it.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I think this is where it gets really kind of unique.
And I mean, I use the word spiritual broadly here. It's not like there's a book of religion or anything like that.
Right.
But one of my favorite aspects of the Lord of the Rings as a setting is that because there is no religion in the writing per se, except for the actual facts of creation and the history of the people fighting.
Right.
Like there's not like, oh, these guys believe this and these guys believe that kind of level of detail. That makes all of the fighting about, the saving the world, which is really what they're fighting about, have a lot more moral heft to it. And the other thing I enjoy about the setting is that, like a lot of Asian storytelling traditions, the bad guy is absolutely evil.
100%.
There's no like, oh yeah, but he's a good guy if you talk
Morally
to him.
great.
Yeah,
No.
He's just evil.
Pure evil.
He
Yeah.
just wants everybody to
Yeah.
follow him and have complete power. So like in Star Wars, there's a joke that the Empire did nothing wrong. That's not true in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I have a friend who constantly tells me Sauron did nothing wrong.
I have actually chastised that person in the game store.
I remember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
because
for
I was
doing
like,
that.
no, you don't understand how this story.
You know who you are.
Yeah, that's just not right. I don't want to bog down on that. But at any rate, what that means is there's basically the negative pressure psychologically of quote unquote the shadow.
Shadow.
And you have a shadow ranking. And that's basically your hope. And I'm not going to get into the character generation again too much, but in this case, my Gira, daughter of Gutar, which is one of the pre-gens that comes with the starter kit, has a hope rating of 13, which means that she can use that hope rating in combat and to do things, but she can also, she needs to be very vigilant that if she does things during her adventures that gain her shadow points, that she could run out of hope. And effectively, if you run out of hope, if she got 13 shadow points for her 13 hope, or if she spent 8 hope and got down to 5, and then she ended up with 5 shadow points, when hope and shadow are equal, now you're miserable.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're miserable, things start to not go your way so much.
Because thematically, so much of Tolkien's work in Lord of the Rings specifically really is the hope pushing against that shadow, as we're saying. And it is
exactly what
without
it is.
it, what are we even doing here?
And it's sort of like, it reminds me a bit of that scene at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. Hopefully you've read the books, but you might remember it from the movie as well, where Boromir shadows, no pun intended, Frodo, when Frodo's trying to leave the Fellowship.
Yeah.
And he ends up talking to him in the woods and pleading the case for him to give the ring to Boromir so he can take it back to Gondor. And Frodo refuses and tries to get away, and Boromir loses it.
Yeah.
And and that's basically sort of representative of his hope dwindling to the point where the ring can corrupt him.
Yeah.
That's really the mechanic we're after. And by the way, this gets a little more advanced the more you play, because the shadow getting higher on your character can actually cause the eye to figure out where you are and what you're up to, and that can increase the likelihood, or really guarantee the likelihood, that now you're getting chased.
Yeah.
You know, people are after you because the eye has figured out that you're trying to do something that's preventing them from becoming the one true king of all of Middle Earth.
Another kind of fun parallel is if you look at Denethor, the character.
Yeah, he's
Denethor,
another one. Yeah,
that
for sure.
man is, especially in the book, you get a little bit more, but like he is in despair. He is in despair. Like he hits a point
I would
where
argue
like,
he's well past.
He's well past it.
He's
no
shadow,
hope.
He's shadow corrupted, but he could probably recover.
And he was once a great man, but he just endured so much, and
then
all this
Saruman
and that. And it was
is another one that's shadow corrupted, but he will never recover.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the despair is
real.
Is real, and once you're there at that point, then what are we even fighting for in all this? So
the important part is that we understand that physical hardships will slowly wear us down, and the sort of like psychological fight that each individual character is in with the shadow will also wear you down. And those are independent tracks. And we'll get into, we're going to do a whole other section on combat and dice rolls, and you'll see a little bit more how the mechanics fit there. But the important takeaway here is, you know, like I have a lot of people that are interested in the One Ring, and they look at the rules briefly, and then they ask me about it, and they don't necessarily understand that combat is so dangerous compared to D&D.
Yeah.
Not as bad as Morkborg, but it's in the middle.
Yeah.
And then the weariness of fighting against this unrelenting evil also wears you down. So, and then you've got wounds on top of all that. So.
But that's, I want to just take a moment to say, that's not to say that this game is punishing.
No, it's not. It's actually it can be very lighthearted even.
Yes. This isn't one where you're going in, going,
but
it's going to be a drag.
The reason I bring it up, though, is because unlike a D&D game, or really a lot of role-playing games, where it's a little more hack and slash, you know, dungeon crawler, you do not go into an encounter in the One Ring, you know, like lightly, like in any way, and that helps with the storytelling a lot, you know. So I mean, really, more than other games, you're considering, is this course of action truly worth the cost of the course of action?
Your decisions carry weight. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very important.
Yeah.
So, because there's multiple phases to playing the One Ring. So unlike like D&D, you don't usually just say, oh, we're going to start the adventure right where the action is. You know, we actually have to travel across you know, the wastes of Eriador or the Wilderlands, or we have to go through Mirkwood or whatever. We got to walk, you know, like that joke in, what was that movie?
Clerks.
Clerks 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's like, it's all walking.
Yeah.
We actually have rules for walking.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
It's
called Journey. And basically, you split up your party into a guide, scout, hunter, or lookout, and you have different sort of roles. And then you kind of roll a simple test against, like, okay, well, you know, like what, you know, like, did anything happen?
Yep.
And
were you spotted? I mean, is there
and usually
any
each adventure will have a custom table for different journey areas that you go through. You also have the sort of like, how dangerous is this part of Middle Earth? You know, we're used to seeing all these maps that are just beautifully drawn, but when you play with a team of adventurers, they can literally kind of draw a map out and go, okay, we're going to come across the Lonely Mountain, or we're going to go to the Lonely Mountain. So we're going to come across, you know, we're going to go through Rivendell, then we're going to hike up over the mountain pass, and then we're going to go up to the Old Elf path, and we're going to cross Mirkwood there, right? So they would like draw that out, and I would say, okay, let's just talk about this part of the journey first, and then I would look in my lore masters materials, and I would figure out, okay, based on where they said they wanted to walk, how dangerous is that area? And, you know, depending on how dangerous it is, they'll have more or less to worry about. They'll have more or fewer encounters on the road.
Yeah.
And then on the road encounters are usually more like wandering monsters in D&D or in a similar role-playing game. You know, they're not as impactful to the lore, but they're there just to wear you down. And just to give you an opportunity to gain a little shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, like, depending on which role you're in, you might be able to affect how the encounter begins. You know, like, oh, I'm the lookout or whatever. And those are fun. It's nice to have a journey system that's sort of enriched by the way Middle Earth sort of works in terms of the different dangerous areas of the town. And it's just a town. The world is, and it's really important just from even if there's nothing in the adventure itself that wears you out before you get to the first real plot point area, just the journey itself is going to take a toll.
Sure.
And that's really what they're trying to represent. I'm going to skip combat because we're going to talk about that in the whole next thing. Another important phase of play is councils. So for example, when Frodo arrives with the ring in Rivendell with Sam and Arwen, and then shortly after Aragorn and Gandalf arrive, they're actually not there to meet for the Fellowship of the Ring. That was actually an accident.
Yeah, it was just, well, it was...
Well, they were there for a month and a half, but other people were coming to talk to Elrond about other stuff, and they ended up having the meeting together because all these people were affected.
You say accident, I say it was...
It was the ring, or the White Council, I guess. Yeah.
It was kind of fortuitous in many ways, but
It was influenced by the wills, what have you. So there's lots of examples of this kind of meeting in the books and the movies.
Yeah.
And when the dwarves are explaining to Elrond how they're gonna find the entrance to the Lonely Mountain, or when the party is in Watertown Laketown, and they're explaining to the mayor of Laketown, what they're gonna do. Anyway, so there's always these meetings, and councils have fun rules. They're basically sort of dice roll moderated negotiations, and you have a patron, which is some usually lore-based, but not necessarily lore-based character that's very powerful, that's sort of sending you out on your missions and stuff, and so your patron may or may not be known to the person you're counseling with, which can affect how it goes. So if you're, let's say you're meeting with Bjorn, he doesn't really trouble himself with the politics of the region. It wouldn't really matter who your patron was, But if your patron is like a dwarf, and you walk into the halls of the Wood Elf King Theodred or whatever. No, that's not Theodred.
Thranduil.
You might not want to indicate that you're getting payrolled by dwarves,
right?
Because he's still got a little bit of a thing about dwarves.
He's very touchy.
He's a touchy guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, your preparation is important. You'll actually want to think about what you'll say. I'm not saying you have to script it out, but you don't want to just bash around in a council because you can offend somebody. And effectively, what the mechanics of the council rules give you is the way to model a whole conversation as if it was a dramatic part of the story.
Yeah.
So you accumulate dice rolls until you find out how the meeting ends. You don't just go, okay, one roll, did he believe me or not?
Right.
Did he believe me on this one point, maybe? But not did he believe me enough to give me an escort of Elvis archers or something? That's going to take some convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you offend him, if he finds out that you're, not as true to your cause, these are all the things that could come out in the dice rolls. So really what that means at the end of the day is there's an aspect of diplomacy built into the game too. So it's not just the moral heft in combat can cost you a lot, but it's also, how you talk to other people in the world, not so much like in an NPC interaction, but in a council phase, it matters. It affects the story completely.
And you see this in the movies if you've watched it and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
When the I was going to say the Fellowship. It's not actually the Fellowship. It's like the three hunters. So Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas approach Theoden in Rohan, or when Pippin talks to or speaks up and talks to Denethor. Like there's moments of tension, and it does affect how things go from there.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to, if it's going to be a storytelling game, first of all, it's in Middle-earth. It's a world that's all about storytelling.
Yeah.
And we actually have rules for these kind of narrative interactions when they're really impactful.
Yes.
And that's huge because it's actually, I got to be honest, in some of my less structured, if you will, role-playing games, I sometimes have to kind of make up political forces and make more impactful conversations, than I want to, just because I just need to steer things,
Yeah.
With the adventure having, like an opportunity to go into council phase, I can literally have a lot of loose ends kind of feed into that and be like, okay, we're going to have a mostly narrative session where we negotiate with the elves or whatever. And it's, I think, a lot more interesting that way. Because you don't have to worry about, like major political forces outside of the right kind of forum with the right kind of rules, which I think helps a lot. So. All right, so we talked about travel, we talked about council, we're going to talk about combat in another video, the encounters. Let's talk about fellowship. So, just off the top of my head, journey, adventure, encounters, council, and fellowship. 4 different kinds of phases, if you will. Fellowship is, I like to think of it as the one that's really calendar driven. It's the winter, and it's whatever period of the year you guys decide not to travel, and not to adventure together. And how are you guys going to use that downtime? And downtime is pretty important in Middle Earth, in the One Ring, because if you start to accumulate a lot of dread, a lot of shadow, this is how you get rid of it. Is you, to quote Gandalf, it's the little things that people do to, not the grand gestures to defeat evil, but the taking care of the garden, like making sure the house looks nice. These are the little things that win against the darkness.
Your chores?
Yeah. Well, not just your chores. What you do during your fellowship phase.
Yes, it's your downtime kind of, and how you're.
I mean, mechanically, there's a few things built into it, but from a thematic perspective, that's how I like to think of the fellowship phase. It's like if I was reading a book that was this adventure, it would be like, okay, then everybody went home, or we all spent the winter, Minas Tirith, and we trained and stuff, and we didn't have another adventure until the ice receded or whatever. Like however you want to
sipping tea and reading books.
However you want to make that gap work.
Yeah,
that's really what the fellowship phase is about, and it does have mechanical parts, so that works really well. You've got the opportunity to recover hope. You can heal injuries. So remember I said you get wounds earlier? That's not endurance recovering. You actually have to, like you got sliced open. You've got to heal.
This isn't just drink a potion and you come back up.
So not only do you want to recover hope, you also want to reduce your shadow score. So you can do things to reduce your shadow. And then this is also where advancement would occur. So you can train and improve your character. You may pick up a skill or a proficiency or something like that based on how your character is progressing. And then any personal undertakings, if you have like a backstory where you run a farm or something like that, you might have to go back and take care of that.
I was a hobbit brewer.
And then reconnect with your, just go back and reconnect with your folks if you have the opportunity. Now, obviously, if you're like on the other end of the area, then, you might not have time to go all the way back home or not, but you might, like it's kind of up to you guys. It's funny, you had a brewery.
Yeah.
My mom did that with her. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I homebrewed characters for all of my family on vacation one year.
Oh, that's
because they were pestering me about, what is this, RPG stuff.
What are these games you're playing,
And I'm
Larry?
like, I'd rather show you than try to explain it to you. So we actually had like an hour-and-a-half session with like 8 of my family.
Wow.
And my mom's character was a brewer.
Nice.
And she could not get past her backstory. Every time I asked her what she wanted to do, she was like, well, I'm looking for yeast. Or I'm looking for like hops. And I'm like, Mom, you're in the jungle of Schultz. You're nowhere near your brewery. Your brewery's like, like a 4-day like ship.
Yeah, but she's looking for other stuff that she could
checking
bring
it
back.
out.
I love that.
So, had we had more time, I would have indulged her a bit, but I couldn't. But anyway, that's kind of what the fellowship phase is about. And there's mechanics and rules for it, but unlike the other 3 phases, this one's really about how do you recover for your next major push.
Yeah,
and
in a thematic
because
way.
Wounds and shadow and hope and endurance all sort of have their own physical or spiritual component, you don't just have a long rest and you're back at it. You wear down over many sessions. And so that's why the fellowship phase is important. So let's talk a little bit about the theme itself. I mentioned this at the opening, but this is the part of the game that really gets me excited, and that is the way the game looks on the table, the way the game feels to play, the dice. The theme is just
gorgeous
in everything.
The artwork is phenomenal. The production
this is
value
the starter
is
set,
so good.
And this is actually the second version of the One Ring. The first version was by a different company called Cubicle 7, and Cubicle 7's stuff was gorgeous. But I think the Free League stuff is just even more so.
It's so good.
It's just fantastic. They actually simplified the visual identity a bit, and without really losing any gameplay fidelity, I think.
Yeah, the fun part, I think the artwork's great because it kind of comes across as like production design, almost like if you like the appendices for the trilogy, which I love them. I watch them all the time, and you see all the really cool John Howe, Alan Lee drawings and stuff. That's kind of what this vibe is. And it's gorgeous.
Actually that's an important point, because the theme, to be blunt, the Lord of the Rings audience is a fairly demanding and informed audience. Even if you're lightly into it, you can still have a lot of fun with this game because the game takes care of that. You literally can be like a non-Lord of the Rings geek and just read the rules and follow the rules, and you're going to be playing sort of in the world the right way, which is nice. And that's actually the importance of the theme. It's not like in the olden days, when like what is it, Iron Crown Enterprises did Lord of the Rings, Ice.
The old one.
Yeah, this was back when RPGs were being designed by largely the simulation community, and we had to come up with rules for every single thing that could happen in the fantasy world because we were trying to simulate like the mechanics of it. And it was a good game, don't get me wrong, especially a lot of the supplemental art for that game was unreal.
Yeah.
But, it was a lot thicker. You had to do a lot more math.
It was pretty crunchy.
Yeah, and, a lot has happened since, that was in the late 70s, early 80s. A lot has happened since then to role-playing games across the board. And certainly, the One Ring benefits from a lot of improved streamlining ways to play role-playing games. And frankly, the audience is a lot more sophisticated too. We kind of have it's much more common for people to go, yeah, I've played a role-playing game before.
Yes.
Not when this was first starting. So actually what I'm just getting at is, like, first of all, the theme can be intimidating from there's so much writing about this setting.
Yeah.
But they've done an amazing job translating the feeling of the world into the game, and I would argue that you really could know almost nothing about the lore. Maybe you've watched one or two of the movies, and you would still have a good time playing this role-playing game.
What monster has watched one or two and then
it happens.
given up?
We have friends. Maybe it's I don't know.
Larry,
it's possible.
I don't have friends that don't love Lord of the Rings.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
And I have the same problem, but just to give you an idea of my affliction, I've read the whole book series at least 7 times.
Yeah.
I lost count because I used to read them every year or so when I was younger. And I know I've seen the movie. I don't even know how many times I've seen the movies.
I think I watched them like 3 times a year.
I watched all of the movies in the theater at least twice when they came out.
Yep.
And then obviously I had the extended editions.
When they re-release them in theaters, I'm there too.
Yeah, I've been back a few times for those, actually, now that you mention it. I meant the original.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you bring up a good point. This can appear daunting. There's so much lore, there's books, backstory, everything. This takes that and, like you said, makes it accessible.
Let me give you an example. So we're going to talk about combat in another session. But one of the big things with a lot of people that play a crunchier, less narrative-focused game is when you're in encounters, you have maps. And it's like, oh, am I 15 feet away from you? If I'm not 15 feet away from you, I can't reach you with this or whatever.
When you say maps, you mean like gridded maps?
Well, I'm going to get to that. Yeah. And we have maps here too, but we also have a system that they've developed for the One Ring called engagement rings, which has nothing to do with getting married, but it's a very funny pun. Effectively, any combat you do, this is the only map you need. You can certainly use area maps to show where stairs are and how to get around. But during battle, you don't worry about that. You just use these engagement rings. And so like when you have a player that's not as used to playing RPGs but wants to tell a fun story in Middle-earth, it's really a lot easier to show them like, well, all the enemies are going to be on this outer ring, and I just need to know, are you going to be more defensive? Are you going to be kind of in the middle? Or are you going to be up front trying to damage people? And then the fighting ensues from there. So that's one of the many examples where they take, the amazing setting and they just artfully translate it into the gameplay so that it feels like a different world. It feels like Middle-earth.
Yeah.
And like all the way through it. Like not even, except for this part. Like all the way, you always feel like you're in the world. And that's hugely hard to do with like a more general purpose role-playing game. Like even D&D. Like is D&D more about like negotiating a win against the big bad guy now, or is it more dungeon crawl, hack and slash?
Right.
Yes, it's both.
Yeah.
So it's hard for the worlds to get imbued with the theme so thoroughly when they're so flexible.
And to somebody who doesn't know the world very well, it still feels right in the sense of Middle-earth. Like if you and I will digest Middle-earth stuff, Lord of the Rings,
we'll
and so we can kind of have reference, for comparison. Somebody who doesn't know, and that's fine, like, oh, I haven't seen the movies, I kind of know about them. It will feel unique when they're playing it. It will feel unique.
Oh yeah, it'll definitely.
Because
it doesn't play like any other game.
Yes. That's
and for a way that reinforces the theme, not just for novelty's sake.
Yeah.
So I mean, just to kind of sum up, like if you enjoy the sort of setting, you don't have to be a scholar. You don't even have to be like that knowledgeable. But if you just like the setting, and part of the setting is a low magic system, so you don't have to memorize spell books or things like that.
Why don't we touch on that? Because that's actually a good point. Because I think somebody coming into this may be going like, man, I want to be, a wizard. I want to cast all this. I want to do all this magic stuff.
Magic is still a powerful force in the universe, but it's waning. You're in the dying parts of the creative forces that made the world the way it is. It's the third age of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the magic that has existed to this point has really been only in rarefied people's hands, like either like the firstborn elves that were able to master these amazing skills that gave them magical capabilities, or literally agents of the gods, that have magic-like capabilities. So there's sort of magic that's imbued through craft into artifacts. And then there's magic that's imbued through the person's abilities because they're not of this world. They're supernatural.
Yeah.
That's it.
But you're not learning magic.
No, you're not like, I have to go, I could become a wizard? Not possible.
Right. That's,
there are some supernatural capabilities of different cultures. Like the elves and the dwarves have some things they can do during encounters that humans can't.
Right.
Because they're elves and dwarves. And these are things like, well, I mean, I don't want to get too mechanical, but like they're magical adjacent.
Yeah.
But you don't have things like, oh, I'm going to go learn the wish spell.
Right.
That's not even possible.
That's a big distinction in this versus
So a lot
D&D.
of people come into the game, especially if they're coming into the game from a more magic-first system. Like D&D has gotten to be, in my opinion, very much a magic-first system. The martials are not as powerful as they used to be, and really every character ends up taking some magic on. And it's a complex magic system.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on. In this game, it's much easier. You basically have the ability to succeed on a test. And if you succeed on the test simply by passing the number you need to pass, then that's just called a success.
Yeah.
If you succeed and you roll a special 6 on one of your D6s, you'll get a little Tengwa symbol, like a little Gandalf symbol. And if you get, like, let's say you roll one of those on your test, now you don't have just a success, you also have to beat the number. But if you beat the number and you rolled one of those 6s, then you have a great success.
Like a crit.
No, I'll come to that, because you're thinking of piercing, and that's different.
Oh, okay.
And then And then if you roll 2 or more of the 6s of the 10 guys, then you have an exceptional success. Specifically, your weapon might potentially pierce on a extraordinary success. Excuse me. So if you have 2 or more 6s on your dice roll, then that's an extraordinary success. Now, generally speaking, if it's a narrative component, you could just say like your character does something great or exceptional. There are some weapons that will trigger actions based on whether you got a great success or an exceptional success. But mostly it's a narrative sugar thing. You know, that's the opportunity to introduce the supernatural into the storytelling from your character's perspective. Is if you got a great success or an exceptional success, you can basically pull off like that crazy move where Legolas flips under the horse and ends up mounting the horse. Or rides the shield down the stairs or whatever. And I'm just picking on Legolas because he's fun. But that's kind of how magic gets in. So in terms of actions that your character can do. And then clearly there's magic that you gain from possessing relics or interacting with
specific
magical
items.
people. But that's it. You know, that's the whole thing. So if you're really into the magical stuff, being really crunchy, and you can become more powerful through your mastery and wielding of magic, then this is not going to be a good game for you.
Sorry, Harry, you're not a wizard.
So, all right, and then the last thing I want to touch on is the community and the level of passion for this game is pretty astonishing. Well, it's not really astonishing if you're someone that's into the Lord of the Rings, because it's always been an incredibly passionate community. But Free League took over the game from Cubicle 7. Middle-earth Enterprises had decided to change who held the license for games.
It was only a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it was like 3 years ago, I think, maybe 4.
Well,
actually, it was probably longer than that.
I think we said something like 2018. I don't remember.
Okay, so 8 years ago. Wow, time flies.
They've had 2 different starter sets.
Yeah, they have one that's more Shire Hobbit based, and then this new one I think is a much better starter set. All of the characters you see out here are from the new starter set, and this is more Eriador adventure based. So you have hobbits, but you can also play as an elf or a human or a dwarf or whatever, and it kind of fits the adventure. Whereas in the original starter set, it was like, oh, we're going to start out in the Shire because it's easier. And they still do that. In fact, you can get this book that's just Hobbit Tales. And this is really very close to the same adventures that were in that first starter set. But now bundled up as more of a mystery. And this doesn't even level you up. These are all level 1 adventures.
Sweet.
Well, I mean, the last adventure you could do level 2, I guess. But again, leveling is not that big a deal in this game. It really isn't. But anyway, there's like, they just came out with The Hands of the White Wizard, one of the most eagerly awaited books from Cubicle 7 that they did not get to publish, that Free League committed to publishing very quickly after they took over, was the Moria Adventure Guide. And this is an amazing book. And this also introduces solo play. They call it Strider mode.
Strider mode. I forgot about that.
They actually do Strider mode in the One Ring rules. But they, I think, finish explaining them completely in the Moria supplement. And by the way, you can also do the Strider rules solo play in the 5th edition rule set if you want. So if you play the Lord of the Rings role-playing, you don't want to do the special One Ring rules. There's not a lot of D&D based games that have solo play rules, so that's kind of neat. But this is not the D&D version, though, so they've always had it. And then there's also the Realms of the Three Rings, which is all about the elves, just the history of the elves. This one isn't so much an adventure, but I think there is an adventure in it. And then,
I think I have that one.
And then there's the 2 Eriador books, which are basically, like all about Eriador, from a player perspective, what's the history of it, and then specific adventures in Eriador. And then I mentioned the community, and certainly Cubicle 7 had at least, I want to say, probably more than a dozen books. Whoa, careful, about the One Ring and their 5th edition rules version, which was called Adventures in Middle-earth. And there's actually community members that have converted the adversaries from the Cubicle 7 books to the One Ring, so that you can pick up the old book, read the adventure, but when it comes down to dice rolls and balance, it's all balanced for the new rules. So that's pretty huge.
There's a lot of content.
And that helps me a lot too, because I actually have a campaign setting. It's called Suspicious Minds, and it's set. You start in Eriador. You start actually probably in Bree, but you can pick another town if you want, and then you end up. Well, it doesn't matter where you end up, but
spoiler alert.
But I have a very specific set of steps that get you to about level 5 in that game. But I don't know if you've ever played a role-playing game with me, but like I kind of pride myself on not railroading very much at all. So what that means is it's not, like I don't even know for sure how we're going to get to the end of Act 1.
It's very player-driven.
So if I was writing all this myself, that would be doing a lot of work, and I'm still doing a lot of work because I always customize it. But having like the Breeland region guide, and the Eriador adventures from my early passion in the Cubicle 7 publications, and at this time I had not yet fallen in love with the rules for the One Ring, so I was still playing the D&D 5th edition rules. But I've got the Breeland region guide. This, I can't use any of the stats or the mechanical stuff. All the story stuff, 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And stuff like, I wonder what it was like inside the Prancing,
the Prancing Pony has a full
There's
layout,
a 3-level map of the Prancing Pony. Here it is. So just this alone gives players such a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's really nice. And there's lots of this stuff, and I just love these books. In particular, the art in these books is more full color art, so it may be a little bit more fun, whereas the One Ring, it tends to be a little bit more sparse, and I think they're gorgeous. I love the art in the One Ring, but it just depends on your kind of, and by the way, John Hodgson, the art director on the first couple books, was amazing. It's like stuff like that. Like, what was going on in Mirkwood? Well, there's maybe not as much writing in the One Ring expansions, but I happen to have these books, so I can use those too. Or maybe I would just go back and pull out the ice book or something. And then here's a bunch of adventures. Like there's 7 or 8 encounters in here that are fully play tested, like real, so there's a campaign for starting level characters. Here's a lot of really, really hard, tough encounters for higher level characters. And I just had these handy, so that's kind of cool.
These are no longer in print though.
These are no longer in print, but you can find these on the used market.
It's a little bit harder to find.
But I just wanted to kind of show that it's like the community is always working to extend your investment, if it's an aligned investment, because these were all, the transfer of the intellectual property from one company to another. And if you were playing the One Ring 1st edition, or like I was, Adventures in Middle-earth, you were like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I got 20 books or whatever.
Yeah.
Turns out the community figured it out, and you can still use most of that investment. Now, some things are gone. Like, I'll never pull out the Lore Master Guide again, because there's
no reason.
It's just all the old rules, And the Player's Handbook is kind of sort of the same way. So.
The other favorite Lord of the Rings game of mine is Lord of the Rings living card game.
I just played that today.
Yeah, it's one of your favorites.
Fantasy Flight.
Fantasy Flight did an amazing job. Community-wise, and I know this is a bit of a tangent, but so they've basically stopped printing most of that game. They did some of the sagas, reprinted a few things.
But they did some bundling.
Yeah, they did, which was good. I thought
I thought it was nice. Yeah.
But the community took that and basically said, no, we need more. So they made ALEP, which is a long extended party.
Right.
And they made more adventures, more content, more cards, all of that to continue.
As long as you're comfortable printing from home, you don't need to buy any cards now.
But I think that speaks again in volumes of how much people love.
They just love this world.
Yeah.
I mean, look at they're filming Hunt for Gollum now.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm designing my Lord of the Rings tattoo, which is going to go God knows where.
So the fun part is it's a really good game. The theming and the rules work together to immerse you, even if you don't know a lot about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So, if you get a good game master that knows a lot about it like me, then it'll be even easier. But you really don't have to commit that much.
Get some friends together, grab the starter set, read it.
And I just want to close with a quote, and we'll do a little chatting after this. But one of Tolkien's letters, letter 131.
Yeah, I love that.
He talks about, like what's going to happen after he's gone, basically, and what has been happening, because this was a letter that was sort of later in his life. And he says he hoped his legendarium, which basically is all the world-building notes and like materials that he was leaving behind, he hoped his legendarium would leave scope for other minds and hands wielding paint and music and drama. I mean, to me, the whole point of playing a role-playing game is to tell a new story and to take such an incredibly interesting setting and to just ask your table, like, what other things that nobody ever anticipated also happened in Middle-earth?
Yeah.
We're actually, doing
what
the professor wanted, really. So.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I really enjoy the game so much. So in closing, The One Ring takes place in Tolkien's world, but it also feels like Tolkien's world. So it's not just like a setting, like that's sparse. It's imbued in the game.
It's very respectful, I think, in that manner.
The mechanics absolutely reinforce, the major themes of the work and of the world.
Hope.
Courage, weariness, hope, sacrifice. And I guess, just in closing, it's these are all the reasons I think it's definitely worth a look. It's worth at least a one-shot attempt at your table.
For sure.
And it's also why this is absolutely probably my favorite high fantasy RPG. I don't think there's one that comes close from a high fantasy storytelling perspective. I love it. Yeah.